to Marvel Champions Podcast, a podcast about Marvel Champions, the card game. I'm your host, Scott, and with me as always, my co-host, Ryan.
Yes, I am ready to get to one of the best scenarios of the box. Did I jump on that a little too early?
Yeah, that's what it sounds to get back to one of our reviews from the most recent campaign box.
I know this summer's been crazy, so it's been hard to find time to record. Though we've made it happen overall, but it's good to kind of get back into the box and hopefully get it done soon.
Yep, and I think you're right. I think one of the better scenarios is on the chopping block tonight, and let's see what we think about in the scenario 3.
Hela,
It's Hela 2.0.
Hela 2.0.
It's Apocalypse.
Apocalypse.
All right,
Number
Ryan,
one. Apocalypse
why
1.
Yes, Apocalypse 1. We kind of have the big bad right in the middle, reminiscing of the Mad Titan Shadow Box.
Mm-hmm.
You said a better scenario out of the box, so let's hear some of your thoughts on it.
Well, anything particular? Just go for it.
I think we should jump in. Why don't we start with
big news?
The big news is there are 4 stages.
4
Apocalypse.
stages. Now, how on earth are you supposed to get through 4 of these things?
Well,
I can barely get through 2.
Pretty weak, right? I mean, 9, 10, 11, technically 10, 11.
They are pretty weak. Yeah, weak sauce.
Weak.
Just kidding. He's actually pretty tough.
Yeah, I think his kind of the scenario is one of those where it's not as straightforward, where you just clobber the bad guy. It kind of puts in a lot of strategy and dealing with the side schemes, kind of going through the dungeon levels. I'm with you. I kind of like that kind of balance of when do we go to the next layer with Apocalypse.
Yeah, it definitely is like a Hela 2.0. Not that it's better than Hela, but it has a very similar format. You're going through, there's like a minion that's guarding your path. Once you get past that minion, you can move on through the side schemes and, so on and so forth until you get to the point where you can actually defeat Apocalypse. Now, the method of how it kind of works is a little bit different, especially how Apocalypse works versus how Hela works. And I'll have to say, I think even though they're very similar, it still felt a little bit different going through this one.
Definitely. I think he scales well. So we played standard for most of our games, or standard 2. And if you do play a standard game, you start with stage 2. And then, depending on how well you're doing, depends on if Apocalypse stays in his current stage, or if you're not doing great, it is determined on how fast he's going to bump stages. It's not your typical defeat the stage and move on.
Now, in the games we've played, have we ever gotten to stage 4? I feel like we haven't, but I can't remember.
No, I don't think we got to stage 4. He did advance in one of our games up to stage 3, but for the most part, I felt like if you have a decent team that can thwart, you can usually keep him on stage 2 unless you just get really bad circumstances of cards.
Yeah. The biggest things that I saw that really affect your ability to thwart is obviously the crisis icon, and he's got 2 side schemes that can come up that have that crisis icon that's designed to hold you up so that he can flip.
I do like that all the kind of icons and the strategy that's in play really synergize together to try and get him to advance his stages.
Yeah. I really like it's that side scheme, the Apocalypse solution. It's not only trying to deck you out, but it's holding you with that crisis icon. So I really like that.
Yep. And technically, he does have an alternate loss condition. I guess it's alternate, but still normal. His stage 4, if you let the main scheme pop, when he's on stage 4, you lose the game.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was really good. I liked how it scales well. So a big thing in the Next Evolution box that I liked was, I just said scaling, didn't I? I meant pacing.
Okay.
Because you mentioned scaling already. I'm not repeating what you said. Pacing of the scenarios is what I really liked. And Next Evolution, I thought, had a lot of good pacing scenarios. And I think this one digs into that a little bit with the side schemes and their acceleration icons. As you are progressing, the acceleration icons get piled on, trying its best to get you to flip to a new or reveal a new stage of Apocalypse.
Right. I'm with you. The tempo of these, you're trying to balance, like, okay, we got the Prelate defeated, but do we kind of sit on this side scheme for another round or two to try and build up? Or do we advance in hopes to try and kind of get ahead a little bit?
Yeah. And it was I will say, I don't know if this is, I wouldn't say it's a negative, but something I did see is that can lead to a little bit of a stalemate, where you're kind of just keeping the status quo while you're getting set up to be able to move on. But I think it has pieces in place to try to prevent that. But if you have the right setup, you can kind of stay still for a little bit.
Yeah, there is that kind of treading water aspect to it. Because when you defeat the Prelate, he's gone, and you can kind of tread water with that side scheme out, but you're not really advancing the game to the end, right? To the win.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another thing I'd say is he does have 4 stages, like we talked about. I mean, that's a big deal. It's new. But you don't ever get to see them all. You only get to see 3 of them in a, right? You get to see...
Well, if you're doing, I guess, a sub-standard one, you could see all 4, I guess. Because if you just played really bad, he would go from 1 to 2 to 2 to 3 to 3 to 4.
Now, I'm looking at the setup just to make sure I got it right. Because the contents, there's an Apocalypse 2 and Apocalypse 3. That must be a misprint on here.
No, so I think in Expert, you start on Apocalypse 3.
Okay, but you still have Apocalypse 4 underneath.
Correct.
But you only start with Apocalypse 1 if you're doing like a skirmish. Is that right?
Correct.
See, I think I would rather have seen Apocalypse 1 in there and maybe make him weaker so it flips real easy, kind of like a Crossbones, where it's really pushing to get it flipped pretty quick, and there's not much you can do about it. So I'd like to see that interaction, like he's getting stronger. Because if you're skilled enough, if you have the right heroes to be able to thwart, you can keep Apocalypse on 2 in standard mode.
Right. I think the big thing, and we haven't really talked about it yet, Apocalypse starts in a stage 2 as a 2/2. He has steady, toughness, and then when the main scheme is completed, you remove all the threat from it, then you advance him, right? Mm-hmm. He has 9 hit points per player in that stage. To me, that's like your base Apocalypse, right? When you think of Apocalypse, you think of like a higher level big bad who's going to have steady or something that's making him pretty beefy.
Yeah.
And I could see where stage 1, he's just a little bit too much of a cupcake.
Yeah. I mean, he does have toughness, but just a 1/2. That's pretty straightforward.
And then he scales up. Stage 3 is 2/3, and Apocalypse 4 is 3/3. And he gains overkill with his attacks.
And stalwart. Steady turns into stalwart, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is pretty
nasty.
Pretty tough.
In case with, boost cards, that's hitting for probably on average like 5 or more.
Yeah. And his cards, he can attack quite a bit. He's got 3 treacheries called Wolf Among Sheep. And those, the prelates attack, but if you've got them already eliminated, Apocalypse activates against you. So that's pretty nasty.
See, that's one of those kind of decisions you make, right? Do I let this prelate just kind of hang out and have to deal with him and Apocalypse, or do I take him out and then I might be susceptible to this wolf among sheep and get attacked by Apocalypse again?
Yeah. I remember having a conversation about that. So yeah. He also comes with some superpowers. He's got 3 attachments that are, I would almost say, kind of standard for a lot of villains. They kind of have an attachment that helps their scheming or their thwarting. So he's got biomorphing, which is his attack one, and he gains overkill. And then he's got cyberpathy. Is that how you say it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's his scheme one, and that one allows him to place threat on each side scheme. So I'd say this one's probably the nastier one of the 2 that I just mentioned.
Yeah, those 2.
Yeah. And then he has a third one, which is molecular control, which Apocalypse gains retaliate 1 and stalwart, and that one's pretty nasty.
Yeah. I feel like these want to give him the appearance of being in his 4th stage.
Yes.
Because if you look at his stage, he's +1 attack. He's got the additional overkill boost star. And then he's got stalwart. So he's kind of gaining those without being in stage 4. And I'll agree with you. The cyberpathy, that one came into effect more than I wanted it to. Especially since he does kind of have that side scheme deck that you're kind of trying to get through. It kind of put more and more on that and kind of extended getting through those a little more.
Yeah. This scenario requires you to have strong thwarting, and when that gets put on, it really puts the pressure, especially if you get some bad timings put up, and he's got that, and he's going to be scheming, and there's also, say, the Apocalypse Solution, which has that crisis icon, that's going up. The threat on the side schemes that you're trying to get down to kill him eventually, those are going up. Anything additional is going up. It can pile on really quick if you're not careful.
Right. And I think there's this balance of having to deal with the main scheme so it doesn't advance, as well as, working that side scheme deck down. You're really having to kind of pick and choose where you're putting your effort and energy into.
Yep. I think the other aspect of this one is, and I'm just going to mention his other card he comes with is an attachment. It's called the Fittest, and it attaches to minions. Encounter set, not his specific one, but the ones that are recommended for the scenario. There's a lot of minions in this. You're going to be getting hit by minions often in this scenario, and he's just kind of throwing them at you, making them a little bit stronger, while also still punching you pretty tough. Yeah, so one of the things that he wants to do with all those minions, of course, just throw them out, but he's trying to have you waste all your attack on them as just meat shields, because defeating him is helping you get rid of that thwart from those, from that main scheme to help it keep him from advancing. And so, I mean, the minions are a key aspect. So I don't know if I haven't played it yet in a way that you take out the Infinites and Dark Riders and just put like minions in there and see if that plays any different.
All right, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because when you defeat him, you do get the benefit of decreasing the main scheme by his hit point value.
Yes.
Yeah, it would be defeated.
Which is quite a bit.
Yeah, 9, 10, 11. I don't think we've said this yet, but the threshold for the main scheme is his hit point value.
Yep, per player.
Right. And the other thing that we talked about his attachments, but his attachments get attached and they stay until you can defeat him. So you do run that risk of trying to slow play, keeping him stronger, and not try to kill him. Or, like you said, you're having to deal with minions and you can't kill him. It keeps him that much kind of beefed up.
Yeah. I will say it is kind of nice that if you defeat him, even if it's not the final time, those attachments go away. Right. So at least you can have that respite of, all right, we beat him. Let's breathe for a second because he's not devastating us with all these attachments. But he just gets them back pretty quick because whether it's an encounter card or a boost card, he gets them.
Yeah,
so
that does stink.
Do you want to move on to the prelates since they're pretty key to this scenario?
Yeah, so pretty much every time you advance you start with the prelate, and then when you advance those side schemes, you get a new prelate. And pretty much every little kind of stage you're advancing through, you get a new prelate.
Yep.
And they are not very friendly.
No, they're kind of nasty. Which one do you think is in the upper echelon of nasty?
So I think the big thing to point out is each of them have 5 per player health. So they do scale based on player number.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they all have toughness.
No, yes.
So
yes, they do.
Unless you've got a lot of piercing, you're kind of wasting. And it looks like a couple of them went to jump to the first. No, I think everybody jumps to the first player. So they hop back and forth, right? Yep. He's villainous, which is never fun. He's got
sinister, yeah.
Piercing, yeah. I don't know. Shadow King's kind of rough too, because if you got to discard allies and put threat. I mean, same thing with Abyss. He wants to take cards from you. I don't know. They're all kind of gross.
Yeah, they're all pretty nasty in their own way.
Yeah, and they're all pretty beefy. I mean, you've got a 1/1 but has villainous, a 3/1, a 1/3, and a 2/2. So they're
2/2/2/2s.
Yeah, they're pretty rough.
Yeah,
I kind of like. No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I kind of like the mini boss type feel that they have. They've got nasty abilities. You want to get rid of them before they mess you up. And some, I think sometimes it depends on the characters you're using. Some are worse than others. Like Sugar Man, he heals if he defeats a character. So as long as you don't let him defeat a character, he's pretty straightforward to beat. Not terrible. I mean, he hits hard, but you can manipulate him with that low scheme.
Okay, so I've got a question for you. So they all have victory.
Mm-hmm.
3 as prelates.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, can you play this encounter set in other sets? Like, could you play this in Guardians, whatever it's called?
Most Wanted?
Yes. And just like soup up your victory numbers.
Yes.
But they're double-sided, so there's no like villain back to them.
That's the issue, is that their backside is the mission prelates.
Overseer, yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of they're kind of stuck with that. So putting them in a counter deck is a little difficult. Unless say like you have sleeves, that could potentially, depending if you have like sleeves with backs on them, that would hide them in that case. But in theory, they are their own encounter set in a way. So and maybe, unless the rulebook says otherwise.
Yeah, I'd have to look to see if there's anything that specifically states it's only for the See, it's not campaign specific because his scenario requires them.
The prelates. Yeah, that's true.
And you could play it campaign.
Yeah, so I guess you can, and you get a little heads up when you are playing. You're like, oh, there's Mr. Sinister. He's coming up.
Yeah, but see, that's the unique thing about the setup is they are set aside. They're never part of the encounter deck because they're set aside and then they're victory. So they never go into a discard.
Well, they do have boost icons as well.
Yeah, but that's just future proofing. If there's some card that says do damage equal to the boost icons on the minion in front of you or something.
Sure, if you want to cover your bum like that.
Yeah.
I say sure. Of course, I mean, it's one of those, like, the classic answer, like, it's a co-op game, do whatever you want.
Play however you want to.
Yeah. But, I mean, in theory, yeah, you can. You'll just have some head-up information because of the backs.
Yeah. Alright, so what do you think? That was a good decision? Safe space? Well, I guess, hypothetically, you do get a second encounter set.
Yes. I think... Well, I mean, are you saying, like, Overseer's an encounter set?
It is. It's its own encounter set.
Overseer, I guess, is, but you can't play it in another scenario.
It's true, that one is campaign specific.
Yeah. Now, if they would have just not done that, that would have been nice, because the missions aren't that great.
Yeah. All right.
But hey, it makes sense. I understand saving space. That totally makes sense.
So the prelates, do you think they were too difficult, too easy, just right? What's your Goldilocks take on them?
I think they were good. I think it complements Apocalypse's, like, easier health, being able to take him out and that whole concept of that scenario. So I think they're all pretty good. And it's nice that you don't get to see all of them every scenario. You're going to miss out on one of them when you play.
Yeah, because there's 4 that will be involved in the game.
Yep.
In a single scenario.
Correcto.
So, we haven't really talked about the side schemes very much. You have 3. They're Heart of the Empire, the Towering Citadel, and the Tyrant's Throne. First one has a single acceleration icon, 2 thwart or 2 threat threshold. Second one is a 3
small
threat threshold, 2 acceleration icons, and the fourth one has 4 with 3 4 threshold and 3 acceleration icons.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that the threshold's fairly low. I mean, you do have to get through the prelates first, but they are pretty low. They don't scale at all. No,
they are set. And each of them have the text that threat cannot be removed until a prelate minion is not in play. Or while the prelate minion's in play, you can't remove threat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then once you get through the tyrant,
I forgot that counter set.
You reveal no longer worthy. He heals 5 per player damage. You get a prelate, and he can't take damage Apocalypse until the prelate is defeated. Yep. The other thing to point out is on that no longer worthy, the forced interrupt no longer applies on his main scheme.
Mm-hmm.
So when you defeat him, he's defeated.
He is thus defeated. Yep. That's how you do it. You just get through those side schemes. I mean, you got to get through a lot of other things first, but
yeah. Did you talk about his other encounter sets?
I did not. He has 2 others that he is set up with. That's the Infinites, which we've talked about in the past, and also Dark Riders, which is new for his scenario.
Yeah, that was the first time we saw Dark Riders. Very minion-heavy encounter set.
Mm-hmm.
Teamwork. So, yeah.
Yeah, their teamwork. With the new teamwork rules, that means they're not as bad. The old teamwork rules were a little rough for some. But overall, they're kind of standard. They're not like terrible. I mean, they're kind of nasty and that if they attack, they do stuff, but they've got pretty low health. You can take care of them pretty easily.
Right. They're not awful. Yeah. I do like hard drive's force response. After hard drive attacks you, you place one threat on each scheme. I do like that duality of attacking and scheming.
Yeah. So this kind of brings up a question that I have for you. Just looking through the Dark Riders, a lot of them have abilities that we see very often. Like, after they attack, you're confused. After your attack, you're stunned. Discard this type card. Do a damage to all your characters. I feel like we see these all the time. Do you think that either A, they're running out of ideas, B, they just like recycling the same abilities on all these cards, or C, I don't know.
I think it's like D. I think there's only so much you can do, right, to affect the player. Whether that's dealing additional damage, placing additional threat, using status cards of some kind, making you discard cards you control. I mean, because what's your other options you have? You can force a discard from someone's hand. You could force a different type of card to be discarded.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just don't think there's many more interactions with the game. And because of that, you kind of are defaulted to seeing a repeat of a lot of these similar abilities.
But man, I feel like we've seen these so much. Maybe part of that is the scenario before, the Horsemen. They have basically a lot of these similar abilities in ways like there's one that you discard upgrades. There's one that damages all your characters. It seems like every scenario there's something that does most of those very common abilities, and I'm just wondering if there are other options, or if this is it and they're just trying to just put out new cards.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to the encounter sets, I do feel like there is a little bit more of copy paste than with like a villain, depending on what you need them to do. But I'll kind of go back to my main point. There's just fewer and fewer things you can force upon the player to slow them down or be a negative to them. There's only so many mechanisms in the game.
Yes. Yeah. I just feel like they could change it enough. Like, say, Dark Riders Gauntlet. He's got a force response after Gauntlet attacks you, discard an upgrade you control. Can you just put in there, discard an upgrade costing 3 or more you control? Like, just putting a little bit more specificity in there to like, alter it.
How many 3-cost upgrades are in the game? Not as much as 1-cost and 2-cost upgrades.
Well, then change it and just say 2-cost or
2 or more.
2 or less or 2 or more.
Yeah, that's true.
Just adding some changes. Like, I'm okay if it whiffs, but just changing it slightly, I think would just feel newer to me playing than just like, okay, here's it's like it's a faceless card. Here's the discard and upgrade card that's in every single set.
So you would want something for like Tusk. Something to be like, after Tusk attacks you, stun an ally you control. If you cannot, you are stunned or something.
Yeah, even that. I mean, that would be better. Or, stun all your allies, or
dang.
After Tessa attacks you, exhaust a upgrade you control. I mean, like there are things that I feel like you could just, even if it whiffs, it would still be better, especially if it has teamwork. That I feel like makes it activate more. Obviously, that's kind of the whole idea, and that's why they all have force responses.
But with teamwork, the new nerfed teamwork, it doesn't really activate more. I mean,
correct.
You potentially can activate an additional time, but it's not like it was.
Yeah, it was insane previously, but that's what I'm just thinking is it'd be nice to see just slight tweaking, even if it means it misses. I'd rather see something a little bit different than the same thing over and over.
Okay, so a little more of a fresh take on it. All right.
Yes.
Yeah. I can definitely see your point.
Maybe I'm wrong. Email us and let us know how I'm right, and make sure to tell Scott how he needs to listen to me more often.
Okay. Well, let's go back to the big lug of Apocalypse.
Okay.
I think we've gone through kind of most of his cards, how he plays, the kind of story drive of it, the prelates kind of getting in your way. You did mention the additional side schemes that are in his encounter deck, the Apocalypse Solution. And that one says, when defeated, discard the top X cards from the encounter deck, where X is the numeral in Apocalypse's printed hit point value. So that stinks, and it is a crisis icon. It does have a base of 3. So you kind of are stuck with this decision, like, do I let this sit out and I can't affect the main scheme, which hurts you, but I don't really want to discard at a minimum of 9 cards? Like, that's rough.
Yeah.
Because then that just gets an acceleration token that much faster, and then he speeds up that much quicker.
Yeah. I like how it fits what he's trying to do.
Yeah, it really ramps his pacing.
Yeah.
And I want to say we got like both of those out, and that was awful.
Yeah. He really excels at kind of hitting you on 3 fronts. He hits you in the scheme front by trying to get acceleration tokens out, whether it's through the encounter deck, because he doesn't have a huge encounter deck. Or with the crisis/acceleration tokens. He hits you from just punching you in the face. He's got some strong attack, especially as he goes up in his stages. And then he hits you with those minions. He's got lots of minion power to hold you back. So he's hitting you on a lot of fronts. And that's why you got to have a pretty solid hero that can tackle a lot of these things.
Definitely. He's just wanting to ramp up his scheme. He's very intelligent.
Yeah. So, Scott, what are your final thoughts on Apocalypse 1?
I really like this scenario. I enjoyed it more as a standalone scenario outside the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
I think it plays really well. The pacing, the decision making, the timing. I think it hits a lot of the right things that I'm looking for in a scenario. It is difficult at times. I feel like you can get a couple bad draws and it can really swing the game on you, where you like thinking you're like, I'm in a pretty good place, and you have like one really bad encounter phase or villain phase, and it completely like changes the game on you. Where you advance him and he's now stronger and you weren't really anticipating that. So I do like that. It definitely plays different every time. The prelates, cycle through. You're going to get 4 out of the 5 every time. It's definitely one that's, I think, really hit its paces for where we're at in the game.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's really good. I love the more story elements of of the game. And I think for a third scenario, it's a very solid difficulty level. As you noted, sometimes it can have some very swingy moments, and those can be pretty rough. But overall, I didn't think it was too easy. I thought it was hard enough, and it fit really well in that spot. What are some other notes I had? I do wish I could have encountered the stage 1 in like normal, but I do understand the difficulty and all that, so it's not a major thing for me.
You think it'd be too easy to stay in stage 1 for the whole game? Is that what you're thinking?
As it is designed now, yes, but if we were able to do all 4, that's what I would want, and just make stage 1 his health be pretty low, and just kind of affects things different. I just want him to pop quick, so you kind of get that tempo of like, okay, he's popped, and now like the game's moving.
So almost like a built-in timer somehow. Yeah, you're starting on stage 1, but you've only kind of like in more like Siege, where the first main scheme, has a built-in timer.
I mean, I guess you could do timer. I was just thinking maybe like a low health threshold, like, I don't know, 5. Maybe that's, I mean, obviously that's really low, but I don't know if there's a way to like, if they were able to redesign it where it's more like Crossbones, where like it's going to thread out. And you can try to hold on as long as possible, but it will happen. I would have loved to seen that and like set that tempo of like, it's once he flips, like it's game on. Like he's coming at you every single second. Your easy moment's over. I will say that when we played the campaign, and maybe this is why I like it so much, it just felt so much better as a scenario than Four Horsemen did for me. Four Horsemen just like was go, 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 go as soon as you started that game. And this one, it felt like you were building through that story. You felt like you were on the outside of the city trying to get in. And you were facing these roadblocks as you get to the throne room and finally dethrone him.
It definitely does kind of have more of that kind of video game vibe, like video game story vibe.
Yeah.
Where you kind of are progressing through like a level. I do like that.
Yeah. So, yeah, this is definitely one of the better scenarios of the box, in my opinion. Out of the ones we've done this far, out of the first 3, I think this is probably the best one. And I'm curious to find out if the 4th and 5th villains can do any better than this Apocalypse.
All right, I've got 2 final questions for you before we wrap up.
Okay.
So when the box was announced, everybody was like,
brother,
this Apocalypse looks dumb. What was your take on this version of Apocalypse?
Like the artwork?
Yeah. And I know there's like a few different versions of Apocalypse, and obviously when we get to it eventually, we will get to the more traditional Apocalypse. But
yes, it is hard to get past that original Apocalypse look. It is so iconic and it's just so solid. This one, I don't hate it, but it is not. It's not my favorite.
It's not what you think of when you think of Apocalypse.
Yeah. To me, it makes sense as the like alternate reality version, and like he's already conquered. So I think that aspect of it makes me feel like I'm okay with the design of him, the artwork. But ultimately, it's hard to overcome that classic gray, blue, I guess purple in some ways, depending on the version, but like that classic look. with a giant A on his chest or his belt or whatever.
Buckle. Yeah. Yeah, he's from Texas. All right, my final question. What do you think made him no longer worthy? Is it just like falling down in his throne? Because that's what it looks like in the car.
See, that's how the story goes. He's sitting on the throne, and he doesn't look very... Well, he actually looks very happy to see you. I mean, his feet are huge. Have you seen that picture?
He does have some really big, like, boots. Have you ever seen those weird big red boots? It's like some weird fashion statement. Big red boot.
Well,
you know what I'm talking about?
He's got them. I mean, seriously, his soles of those are like bigger than his chest. But yeah, most likely he laughs because you finally get in. You're like, we're gonna stop you, Apocalypse. And then he's laughing and he stands up with his big red shoes, takes a step, and then literally trips.
He just falls down. That's what makes him no longer worthy. Okay, I like it.
He's no longer worthy. He's like, oh, shucks.
Been defeated by my shoes.
Oh, no.
No.
I mean, that's what it looks like, because he's in that same throne and just kind of falls like, oh, no. Or maybe,
and I was going to say, like,
had a good quip.
Yeah, maybe Deadpool was there and he quipped him to death or something.
It was a bad your mama joke. And he's just like, no.
No, my one weakness.
My one weakness.
Yeah. That reminds me of one of the episodes with Apocalypse in the 90s cartoon. Apocalypse like devises this plan to give Archangel these like schematics of his body where there's like a weak point for him, but it was all a setup. It wasn't real. Yeah. It's a good episode. Got Archangel in it.
Classic.
Yep. He set him up.
And that's what he does. He's a schemer.
He's always 3 steps ahead of you. Except for when he has to stand up from his throne. Then he's no steps ahead of you. He's nowhere worthy.
That first step's a doozy.
Yeah, no kidding.
I mean, but the X-Men genre, I don't know what you'd call it, has had some interesting like weaknesses. Like Scott Summers, his weakness is losing his glasses.
Right, he can't function without his glasses.
Yeah. I mean, I'm surprised no villain, he's the leader of the X-Men, and villain's like, yo, I'm just going to break your glasses. I'm going to be a jerk.
Just going to steal your glasses.
Jean! Help me, Jean!
All right. Well, those are our thoughts on Apocalypse. A great scenario in this new box. But I want to know our community and our audience's thoughts on what is it that makes Apocalypse no longer worthy?
Well, Scott, I agree. I think the community needs to ask this. I do want to ask you one quick question. Sorry to interrupt your closing thing.
Okay, let's hear it.
What do you think the community will vote this as in the top scenarios of the game? Once someone collects all those like once a year, twice a year, they test everybody, not test, but like survey everyone and find out the community's favorites.
So where was this one going to fall in
where do you think this is going to fall? Yeah.
I would definitely say in probably top 5, I think. I think it's going to be up there.
Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the community doesn't like it, but just based off our experience and what the community tends to like more, I think this is going to be in the top 5. Yeah. But let us know, people, if it's going to be in your top 5.
Yeah, let us know. Email us at marvelchampionspod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear from you. We appreciate everybody listening, as always. And if you want to go from a chump to a champ, listen to the Marvel Champions podcast. Thanks.
See you later.